Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Media Boat Podcast, your weekly edition of talk on movies, TV, music, and video games, not necessarily in that order. My name is Mike. His name is Matt.
Hi, my name is Matt. This is the Media Boat Podcast. Oh yeah, and his name is Mike. I skipped that for some reason. Today is August the 8th, 2023. This is episode 395. We are 5 episodes away from 400 of these things, which is pretty wild.
That will put us on just past Labor Day,
Wow.
the week
Okay.
after Labor Day, for episode 400.
Okay. Well, we're cooking. And we're cooking today. We got a bunch to talk about. So let's get rolling right into it.
Yeah, let's get right into it. And we start these episodes with the music section. We start the music section with the Billboard, and we start the Billboard with the Hot 100. And your number one song in the land is Last Night by Morgan Wallen. Coming in at 2, Fast Car by Luke Combs. At 3, Meltdown by Travis Scott. But really, it's because of Drake, because it's featuring him. At 4, Cruel Summer, because it is, by Taylor Swift. And rounding out your top 5, Iron Nitrogen by Travis Scott featuring Playboy Cardi.
I don't know if it's supposed to be elements. It might just
Uh,
be fine.
or Fame.
Fame,
But it's
fame,
an exclamation
fame.
point.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's like pink.
FE exclamation point N.
Truly only Travis Scott knows. But yes, Travis Scott making an impact this week after Utopia. And speaking of Utopia,
Speaking of Utopia, it is on the Billboard 200 at the number 1 spot. So your number 1 album is Utopia by Travis Scott. Congratulations. We'll see if you stick around till next week. As for your number 2, it's Austin by Post Malone. At 3, One Thing at a Time by Morgan Wallen. Coming in at 4, Barbie, the album by our favorite band here, Various Artists. We about favorite various artists. And rounding out your top 5, Speak Now, Taylor's version by Taylor Swift. If you didn't like any of those albums, we have new releases, including Keeping Secrets Will Destroy You by Bonnie, Prince, Billy. I don't know why Prince is in quotes there.
I don't know anything about Bonnie Prince Billy. Don't ask me.
All right. There's also Chrome Dreams by Neil Young. Yes, that Neil Young.
This was apparently a 1977 album that was never released, finally coming out.
Well, it takes a long time to mix these things together.
Sure.
There's also End of World by Public Image Limited. And lastly, The Death of Randy Fitzsimmons by The Hives. Well, those are your new releases. But as is the case when lots of music stories happen, we've clubbed them all together to form Music Bits.
Yes, 2 weeks in a row we have Music Bits because there's just a lot going on lately.
Including a little bit of a follow-up, possibly, to last week's story about Lizzo, where the Made in America Festival, which would be featuring both Lizzo and SZA, has officially been canceled. Where was this taking place?
This, I believe, is in New York because this is the Jay-Z produced festival. It's existed in some sort and form since 2012, I believe. And this is the first year that it's going to be, well, beyond, pandemic years.
This one
is no
was in Philly.
Philly, okay, all right. But yeah, this is Jay-Z's festival.
Right, canceled due to, quote, severe circumstances outside of production control.
Seems like a lot of stuff. Maybe not just the Lizzo predicament, but that may have had a impacted some of this decision.
Yeah, well, you're right. It is the Jay-Z festival, so I mean, it's canceled. So hope, look out for refunds on your way.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that were canceled, last week we talked about Travis Scott canceling his show in Egypt. Well, not canceling, but postponing until he can get the proper permits. But instead, Travis Scott announced Circus Maximus tours, which we said last week was going to be a single event in Rome. Well, turns out that's now going on tour in both the US and Europe.
It's notable because this is, of course, his first tour since Astroworld and since the incident that took place there. So it'll be interesting to see how many people are still willing to go to a Travis Scott concert. We'll see how it goes.
Speaking of unfortunate things, the Las Vegas police have dropped battery investigation on Cardi B over the microphone throwing incident.
Yep. So this is a follow-up from last week's story. They'll no longer be pursuing this. Ooh, nice iced coffee frappuccino looking thing there.
Yes, mint.
Nice. I love a coffee bean.
It's a hot day.
I'm just rolling with the diet or no zero sugar Pepsi over here. So yeah, not the same really. Yeah, so Cardi will not be part of this investigation anymore. They're just dropping that. Moving on from it. So yeah.
I think they watched the video, determined no further damage is needed.
Maybe, or it's just it wasn't a big deal, or maybe this was secretly settled. Secret settle. Maybe.
Why, yes, you can meet Cardi B and apologize to her face.
Exactly. Or no, Cardi B will send you $10,000. It's okay. Just
but either way,
this over under the carpet over here. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, police investigation officially done.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Oh, we got some Taylor Swift news.
Yeah.
As the VMA nominations came out for the MTV Video Music Awards, and Taylor Swift leads all nominations with 8, followed by the aforementioned SZA with 6 nominations herself.
This makes sense because the Midnight's era has had what 4 videos at this point that Taylor has made for it, and all of them are ridiculous. And I'm not surprised at all to see her lead the VMAs here with just sheer volume, if anything. Yeah.
It does lead credence to Taylor making the pivot after she's done with music and possibly this tour to more directing both music videos and possibly TV or features.
I could see it.
She's already acted there, so why not do both? Triple, quadruple threat, whatever she's at now.
Why not? Truly.
Hey, why not? Speaking of the said tour, we all know that this is the last week that she is going to be on tour as she wraps up the LA shows. Is what we would have said had the news not broken last week that Taylor Swift announced additional a whistle there.
Yeah,
that she announced additional Eras tour dates for both the US and Canada.
Yes.
Next year, fall 2024.
So it looks like she's giving herself a little break from touring. Needless to say, she'll be in Europe a lot of 2024. So this was never going to be like a back-to-back-to-back kind of situation. So the US stadiums that she's playing that she did not play in the first leg include Indianapolis, Miami, right? No, somewhere in Florida. I forget. It might be Miami and New Orleans.
I want to say it's Miami.
So Miami sounds
she's playing at the Hard Rock in Miami.
Right. Okay. So those are the 3.
Stadium, yeah.
So those are the 3 stops that she'll be doing next year that she didn't get to this year. So yeah, and then Canada. So if you're, I believe, in Toronto, you'll be able to see her. Where
Toronto will now be the last leg of that tour.
Yes.
But yeah, for those of you who are going to the Taylor Swift NLA concert this week, sorry, it's no longer the finale, US finale that you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so I've been, taking a look, and it looks like nothing's dropping below $500, even after the show has started.
Yep. That being said, there have been rumblings and people posting videos of different, shall we say, close-ups shots of videos and some people possibly making a documentary style or actual like concert style video or
Yes.
movie of the Eras tour at SoFi, much like how The Weeknd did his tour or his concert at SoFi that came
Yeah.
out earlier this year.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if something else like that happens with Taylor Swift.
I think it's possible. I mean, fans already assumed that if there was going to be a concert video taken, it would be the SoFi week. Also, I saw a TikTok that suggested that there were slightly different wristbands given to attendees the first three LA nights as opposed to the latter half. And so people wonder if that's because they wanted a specific light show in the audience for the taped concerts. Could be. So, yeah, I think you're right. But where will that land? Do you think that's a Netflix thing or Disney Plus?
She's on with Disney Plus. I'm sure it's Disney. They'll pay the money for it.
Yeah.
Or what she will probably do is sell the DVD first or Blu-ray first from her own site,
Yeah.
make the initial investment up front, and then put it to streaming. So
Yeah.
sell to the fans first and then put it on streaming.
Except that what makes this interesting compared to like the previous tours that she's done, there's a surprise song that's different every single night. So which one does she choose? Put in your bets
Um,
now.
I'm gonna go with Maroon on that.
Maybe. All right. Well, anyways, enough about Taylor Swift.
Yes. Congratulations to those of you who were able to get tickets and pre-sale for the, I guess, leg B
Yeah,
2024.
that was today, I
Go
believe.
on sale today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Check
today.
your Ticketmaster notifications
Or don't.
or don't. But yeah, when I saw that, I thought, oh, like that's this fall in
Nope.
August and September.
Nope. Nope.
Nope, nope, nope. Next year, 2024. Check the year.
Don't get too excited.
Yep.
Anyways,
Let's see here. And lastly, in music news, the aforementioned Lizzo has responded to sexual harassment and weight shaming allegations in saying, quote, as unbelievable as they sound.
this is just a part of her response. And basically, overall, though, she was just dismissive of them.
Mhm.
So she's instead of taking the maybe something happened, we're looking into it approach, she's going the other way, which is just saying, like, no, these stories are made up. This is false. So yeah. So it looks like this will maybe not be a settlement. Maybe this will go a little further down the line before anybody gets some sort of maybe some sort of court situation, who knows. But it looks like Lizzo has chosen to make this difficult.
Well, she did. This quote does come from Instagram, and the full quote is, usually I choose not to respond to false allegations, but these are as unbelievable as they sound and too outrageous to not be addressed.
Since this has happened, I just want to quickly mention, I guess another person who was somebody who used to work with Lizzo also came out this week saying that she was a difficult and arrogant person to work with. So we have corroboration is happening slowly. So we'll see.
We will see. We'll continue to keep Lizzo watch whenever
So
the
watch.
second shoe falls.
We will see.
All right. Did you listen to anything?
This was kind of a slow week. I did get a new headphone amp though, because my old one, the volume knob broke.
Womp womp.
So I got higher quality going on in these ears, but besides that, no, I did not listen to anything of note.
All right. Well, then let's move right on over then into video games. And we start with new releases, including Atlas Fallen for the PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. Hey, you remember Stray
Yeah.
for the PlayStation?
Kitty.
Kitty game. Well, now it's coming to Xbox One and Xbox Series X.
So yeah, if you didn't get to play it on the PC or the PS5, here's your chance.
Speaking of Stray, we also have Stray Gods, the role-playing musical for everything. You
Yeah, I
got it,
don't
you can
know.
play it.
I don't know anything about this. I don't know what this is, but apparently it's an RPG musical, which sounds interesting, potentially.
Let's see here. We also have 30XX for the Switch and PC. Gourd for the PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. Just in time for pumpkin season.
Yeah.
Tower of Fantasy for the PS4 and PS5. And lastly, WrestleQuest for everything. You got it, you can play it.
It's a good name. I wonder if that's like a wrestling RPG.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of RPGs, there was a surprise Pokemon Presents.
And like the Chiron says, did they fix Scarlet and Violet? And the answer is no.
No, probably not.
No,
but we did get news on Detective Pikachu 2.
Yes.
The game.
Yes.
Not the movie.
No.
The game.
The game
Will be out October 6th.
Yeah, they showed a new trailer for it, which also seemed pretty cool. They kind of broke down the mechanics of it. You're solving crimes in a not Professor Layton, a Ace Attorney style kind of way. The human talks to the humans. Pikachu talks to the Pokemon. It makes sense. There's even Pokemon that you can kind of team up during your investigations with to say track a scent with Growlithe or something like that. It seems neat. I was watching with Christy and she's like absolutely day one on this thing. She wants to play this so bad.
She's a detective.
Yeah, she wants to
Solve
play
the
the little
mystery.
detective Pikachu. She loves mystery stuff, so this is right up her alley.
All right. Something not up her alley is Pokemon trading card game and Pokemon Stadium 2 are available today on Switch Online.
Yes, so if you are already a subscriber to the Switch Online service, if you have the Game Boy and the N64 packs with the expansion pack, as they call it, you get access to these today. So I had both of these games. Pokemon Trading Card Game is a classic. A lot of people liked having kind of a game version of the trading card game. And it's kind of neat that it has like a campaign storyline sort of around the cards. It's unique and they never did it again. Well, they did. There was a sequel in Japan for the Game Boy Advance that never came here. But the original did come here and a lot of people are nostalgic for it. Meanwhile, Pokemon Stadium 2, Pokemon Stadium 1's already available for the service. 2 adds, of course, the Gold and Silver generation Gen 2 Pokemon. It also has a brand new set of minigames. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff.
Not listed here, but just to make note of it, that Pokemon Sleep app is available. You can try it, you can download it, you can use it.
Yeah,
you just have to keep it plugged in and the phone on your bed. You cannot put it on a charger. It does not work.
Yeah, no, it has to, because that's the whole thing, is it tracks your sleep patterns through, I guess, feeling your movements on the mattress. And so, yeah, if you have it over there, it's not going to recognize anything. Yeah, I am also somebody who sleeps with my phone on a stand. And so that's why I've not downloaded or tried this.
Yeah, I had it on Insta download when it became available. Downloaded, and I was reading through the instructions, and yep, I can't use it.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. Okay, enough of everything else out of the way. The real news, Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet.
Yes.
We got some new information coming today, including Mew 2 raids coming to both Scarlet and Violet.
Yep.
As well as free Mew 1 with mystery gift code.
Mew 1. It's like the PlayStation.
If you're gonna call one Mew 2, you might as well have a Mew 1 or Mew 3.
But yeah, so that'll work with the mystery gift thing. You enter the code. It's available if you go to the Pokemon social media channels, I believe you can find it. Yep. Yeah, Mew and Mewtwo. Sure, why not?
Yeah, throw a couple of Mews out there. Let's see here. There was also First Scarlet
First.
Scarlet Violet DLC, the teal mask coming on September 13th,
Mhm.
alongside new selfie options and EV training mini games for all of you who want to improve your EVs. Not
So
the Pokemon
no,
EVs.
EV. So yeah, this is the first of two DLCs. They talked about both of them here. The teal mask is the first one, and honestly, it seems like the weaker and smaller of the two. I think that follows a similar pattern as the Sword and Shield DLC, where the first one is just a little bit more stuff to do, some additional Pokemon, some story content, and yeah, these two, like the more picture kind of photography stuff, and this EV training where your Pokemon are eating mochi to gain EV stats.
And then that brings us into the DLC 2.
Second one, yeah.
The second one called the Indigo Disc, which will launch in the winter and feature a new school and battle options.
This is the big one because this one's going to be battle centric. It looks like kind of a new league to fight. And that it seems like a much meatier package than the first DLC. As it also said, like, oh, you'll have also this like within this indigo disc, which is this like indoor kind of biome kind of thing. There are wild areas per se. Obviously, they're not using those terms anymore, but like the equivalent of those like set up in this like little biome thing on top of all that tournament stuff. So a lot of Pokemon to catch, a lot of battles to have. So these look pretty big. I want to note, I'm not sure what platform or circumstances that they were using to show this footage off, but it looked like it was running pretty well, unlike the actual game. So that means one of two things. Either they're showing this working in a perfect environment, like running off a dev kit or something, or maybe there's a patch coming for performance. I'm
Do a
starting.
performance patch, not a performance console.
Well, yeah, who knows about that? I've been trying to avoid stories, by the way, about that because nothing's confirmed quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are aware, in case you want to write to the podcast and complain that we're not talking about it. Yes, we are aware that some reports have come out about Switch 2 being manufactured and being targeted for a latter half of 2024 release. Until Nintendo says something, we're not going to report it here, but yes, we are aware.
Yes.
Anyways,
Until they say something official,
yeah.
it's now a pie in the sky, comment message boards,
Yes.
nothing officially hitting the channels yet.
So regardless of that, all of that, yeah, I'm holding off. This DLC looks good. I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of cool
Mhm.
stuff in here. I am holding off though because I want to make sure that I can play this game and it's not a pain in the ass to play anymore because it still is. So fingers crossed that maybe they do something before the release of these.
All right. Let's see here. Anything else with Pokemon then?
That was the
Oh, they
bulk of
did
it.
show the new, was it Raikou? Ryoku?
Yeah, there are a couple of new legendaries. One that seems to be like a different form of Raikou, the legendary dog.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, each one of these is always comes with like special legendaries to
Right.
catch.
Either the ancient or the steel version,
Yeah,
the future
couple
version.
a couple of other notes about the non-game notes about the presents. They showed a trailer with more footage of the US dub of Pokemon Horizons.
Mm-hmm.
They also showed a trailer for a new Paldea themed miniseries called Paldea Winds, I believe, similar to Hisuian Snow, which came out with Arceus. So it's another one of those web short miniseries. Looks pretty cool though. It follows a group of students that are at the academy in Paldea, and then
And then,
also a new animated short, I believe. I think it's just one short for now, and then maybe they're going to do a couple more about the trading card game. This looks like a Western production. and is not an anime, and looks like going to follow a young girl as she joins a group, a club of Pokemon card experts. Seems cute.
Right, and that will coincide with the Pokemon card game tournament happening in a
Yes.
couple of weeks here.
Yes, in Japan,
Yes.
which they talked about briefly as well. So yeah,
Yep.
that was the presents.
So if you want to go to Japan in the upcoming weeks, you can get a bunch of new Pokemon merch with it.
You can do that.
All right. Enough
Which is
about
more, which is harder to get, the Pokemon merch at the Pokemon World Champions, or the Taylor Swift merch at the thing outside of SoFi?
The Taylor Swift merch, because that thing literally wrapped around the lake.
Oh yeah, I heard that on Sunday, the day that she wasn't doing a concert, it was still open. It was still ridiculous.
Yep.
Kiss FM, our local pop station, was giving away Taylor Swift merch packs because they can't
couldn't
give away
tickets. Yep.
So it's the one, like, it's so funny. They're doing like, they're calling themselves Swift FM this week, and like playing Taylor every break, and yet they can't give away tickets because there are no tickets. It's absurd. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. But yeah, so LA life.
Yes. But outside of both Pokemon and Taylor Swift, Nintendo did have a record quarter, as The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom drove a record quarter for Nintendo Switch, with the company confirming it sold 18.51 million units of the game as of June 30th. During the 3-month period, global sell-through of first-party software reached the highest level for a first quarter since the Nintendo Switch launched in 2017. Nintendo also enjoyed a record first quarter profit of 185.4 billion yen, or $1.294 billion, which, for those of you keeping score at home, is up 82% and surpasses the 2020 period when it released Animal Crossing: New Horizons at the start of COVID-19 lockdown, which helped boost its sales.
So yeah, everybody kind of wondered in 2020 whether that was going to be the peak of the Switch, because everybody was like, oh wow, everybody's home and buying video games, it's nuts. And so to have them outdo even that, now that people are no longer locked down, means that the Switch is still incredibly popular. So it makes you wonder, well, how legit are these rumors about the Switch 2? Because if Nintendo has such a sales juggernaut still, what they probably, to a certain extent, don't feel the pressure, at least financially, to go and bother releasing a new console that could potentially split their market. But there's one thing why I think that there is some truth to the rumors, and why we will probably get a new Switch is because despite the sales numbers still being strong, the developers are probably breathing down Nintendo's neck and being like, we can't do this anymore. Like, we can't make games for this thing anymore. We're diminishing returns. I mean, look at Scarlet and Violet. It's the perfect example of this. Is like, it only works as long as you work with the technology, and the technology is getting old at this point.
And you can't keep putting out AAA titles on a cloud-based platform either.
No. So yeah, I do think that we will get a hardware revision next year, but man, the fact that it's still selling as well as it is, yeah, it's never, Nintendo has never had to deal with this problem before, because even the Wii, which was also a huge juggernaut in its first few years, by year 6, it had already been on the downhill slope. The Switch never stopped. The Switch is only getting bigger. Nintendo has never seen this happen before. This is not any I think the only comparison you could make is maybe the PlayStation 2. Like, I don't think that there's any comparison.
Well, it does help when you put out your kind of flagpole marquee games of Mario Odyssey one year, Breath of the Wild the first year, second year, Animal Crossing the next year, Pokemon the next year, Switch, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom the following year. Like, if you consistently put out your and Metroid Prime or Metroid Dread, throw that in there as well. Like if you consistently put out your first party games at good levels that make people want to play them, it's going to drive the sales of the consoles.
Yeah, and they're not done. We still have Mario Wonder coming out in October.
Yep. I mean,
So,
Pikmin 4 just dropped too.
and Pikmin 4 just happened. It's it's just going to be an incredible system to try to catch up, to follow up if you're Nintendo. I don't know how they do it, but they're going to try. All right, let's move on then to the second half of this show, which of course starts with television. And we always start television with the sports corner. As you point, we start with sports with some sad news for fans of the US women's soccer team. Unfortunately, they were eliminated from World Cup contention in the 16th round by Sweden, and by a very small margin.
By a penalty kick.
Mm-hmm.
That was also a blocked penalty kick, but so much force on it that it did technically cross the line, thus counting technically as a goal.
Yeah, it's weird. Nonetheless, though, it wasn't the year for the team. I've seen a lot of fingers pointed at their coach. What are your thoughts about this?
Depends on what platform you're looking at and kind of people who are following. Some people pointing to the coach, some people pointed all the blame on Megan Rapinoe and how she wasn't even playing in the last 3 games, coming in as a sub for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, really depending on where you're at, a lot of people were pointing the finger on them having exerted all their time in legal battles the past couple of years for equal pay, that it, quote, influenced their play.
Well, I'm going to rule out that last one.
Well, I'm just reporting here. I don't do that either.
We've seen how incredible of athletes they are, and when they were playing well, they were playing well.
But here's the actual truth of why they were eliminated. You can't be good all the time, and there is good competition around the world, and this just proves it.
Yeah.
The fact that they were only able to win 1 game in group play and tied to the other 2, and then lost here, that we need better scorers.
Yeah.
I think we need a younger team out there, faster team, but also just the level of competition around the world has gotten better. Mm-hmm. You can't have just be dominant year after year after year with everyone else not being able to catch up to you. Eventually, they will catch up and surpass you, and that's just where we're at right now. We're at the surpassing level. We got to get back to the level of competition of the world.
Yeah, it's sports. Things come in waves. It's why the same team doesn't win for like 10 years straight. It's always ups and downs no matter what, and this is just, we're seeing that on the global scale. It just happens, which you're right, like it's always gonna, other teams are always gonna get better, so you just have to maintain what you have and work with your strengths. And you're right, and they've already got the seeds of a younger, faster team already on their lineup. It's just that they're not in charge yet. They're not taking full advantage because they're new, they're rookies. Let them grow, let them practice, let them develop a new feel for the team with that younger spirit, and then maybe who knows what we'll see in 4 years.
Yeah, when you have veterans like Rapinoe, like O'Hara, like Ertz, who come off the bench, it's saying that your veterans are not the stars here. It's the new team, but they're not, outside of Alex Morgan, not really stepping up and playing to that level yet.
I was just gonna say, like, what does your bestie Alex Morgan say about all this?
The level of competition is better, so we have to get better.
Yeah. There you go. So so just dust it off the shoulders. Let's move on to the next one, because this one is done.
Well, for the US. Otherwise, you can still root on the remaining teams. That's not to discount them. Go Brazil. I think you guys are pretty good.
All right. So keep an eye out for those. Meanwhile, hey, football is kind of back. At least we had a football game this past
US
week.
Football, not international football.
Correct. Yes, I should clarify. Yes, American football and not the band. We had the Hall of Fame game in which the Browns beat the Jets 21-16.
This will not count as an official win for
No.
the Browns.
Sorry. As much as Browns fans would want it to. We also, that of course coincided with the 2024 Hall of Fame first ballot nominees.
Well,
Who
no,
are,
this is next year's nominees.
I know, but they announced them.
Well, yes, this is so. Well, they didn't technically like announce them. This is just anyone who becomes eligible after the 5 years have
I see.
passed since they
I see.
announced retirement.
Got it. Okay. So eligible for
For
the
next
Hall of
year's
Fame
Hall
next
of
year
Fame, yes,
include, see, this is, you got to phrase it because I don't know what you're talking about.
okay.
Those names include Julius Peppers, Antonio Gates, Jamal Charles, Brandon Marshall, Sebastian Janikowski, Andrew Luck, Eric Berry, and Haloti Nagata.
That's Haloti Nada.
Oh, you
G
don't
is
pronounce the
silent.
G.
Yes.
Any relation?
No.
So yeah, are these good picks? You think they who makes it? You think?
In terms of being a first ballot, which is hard in itself, means that you're like, yes, just you see him on the name, yes,
Right.
they had a great Hall of Fame career. I would put Antonio Gates and probably Julius Peppers as the two to get in on a first ballot.
Yeah. I mean, Janikowski played for a very long time. Do you think that he's one of those in contention there?
Yeah, but he was a Raider, so I don't know how much of that really counts.
It's fair. It's fair.
Let me put it this way. If Devin Hester cannot get in on a first ballot nominee, they put the bar really high for first ballot.
So what does that say about your man, Andrew Luck?
Oh, I'm just happy he's even nominated here.
Oh. All right. So then we'll see when we talk about the Hall of Fame next year.
It does put in the reminder that it has been 5 years since Andrew Luck officially announced his retirement after a preseason game.
Yes. Oh well. Sad, but hey,
yep.
maybe he will be rewarded for his years of service.
His 8 years of service or whatever, 6 years
ended up being.
Well, yeah. 6 years of service.
Speaking of rewarded, the Baltimore Orioles and Atlanta Braves are the first in the MLB to pass the 70 win mark and are by far probably the best performing teams overall in the league right now. Baseball continues to baseball as we get into kind of the dog days of summer here, and games start getting more and more important. So if you're a Baltimore or Atlanta fan, you are in good spot right now.
Meanwhile, in the race to the bottom, the Oakland Athletics and the Kansas City Royals are the only teams left to have not reached 40 wins in a season.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, not a great year for either of those teams, but they've been lousy all season long, so it's not super surprising. Meanwhile, in the race to the middle,
you mean the wild card?
Oh boy, it's just embarrassing how back and forth all sorts of teams are. Some teams got really hot after the trade deadline. It seems like some of those other teams have completely frozen. The Angels, for example, have enjoyed 7 losses in a row. So yeah, it really depends. It's a very strange streak. Yeah, it's a very
7L streak.
Strange look as a whole for the league right now.
That is currently the largest streak in the MLB, both either counting wins or losses.
Oh, you hate to see it.
Well, I mean, what team you root for, but yes, you hate to see it.
I'm knocking on wood. There is another game today. We will see what happens. Maybe there's some life left.
Maybe they don't blow it in the 9th.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Anyways, that's baseball. Meanwhile,
the race is close for that wild card. We do have the months of August and September to go through.
Correct.
So any huge swing and run can take place.
Yes.
These are not set in stone.
It could be you. Whoever is listening
MLB
to this
team that is listening to us.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you for your ears.
Yes. Shohei Ohtani, if you're listening to this. Hi. Anyways. Lastly, in sports news, before we move to a bigger sports story, we touch on college football, which starts in 2 weeks.
Yep. We are literally 2 weeks away from kickoff for college football with Navy versus Notre Dame on NBC.
Yes.
That will be on the 26th, end of August.
Yes.
But that was not the big news that
No.
shook NCAA football and really schools this past week.
It's time to potentially pour one out for the Pac-12. Whatever is left.
Cheers,
Yes,
to
cheers to the
100
Pac-12.
years of Conference of Champions.
Yes.
Now jump in the grave.
Whatever is left of the Pac-12 isn't what the Pac-12 used to be. Starting next season, 2024, only 4 schools, that would be Cal, Oregon State, Washington State, and Stanford, will remain, as the other 8 members have been accepted into the Big 10 or Big 12 as part of a conference realignment.
So there was a news story today that I saw that said both Cal and Stanford are currently in talks, though, to join the ACC.
Right. I also, yes, we talked about this briefly last week because I remember you made a joke about that being super weird.
Well, yes, they were. They made official submissions though this past week.
Okay.
That both Cal and Stanford, 2 California teams, have been asked or are asking to join the Atlantic Coast Conference. Just really? They're of course they're ACC teams.
Yeah,
they're in the name.
Yeah, of course. Anyways, each school will say they moved for different reasons, but the botched media rights attempt for the Pac-12 seems to be a common sticking point. So currently, the Pac-12's media rights deal is with ESPN and Fox, but it expires at the conclusion of the upcoming season. While a new media rights deal from Apple came in at $20 million annually per school before incentives, it's nearly $12 million less per year than the next lowest deal for a power conference. By the way, Big 12 teams are set to earn $31.7 million annually.
And Pac-12 was being offered $20 million.
Yeah, so that's a big difference. Despite more than a year passing since negotiations for that new TV contract began back in June 2022, the league had not presented a firm media rights deal to its member schools until this past Tuesday. So, yeah.
And that was when everyone said, no, thank you.
Right.
We're going to go to where there actually is a deal.
So, again, it really comes down to money, is that they want to be in the division where they're going to be exposed to the most people, getting the most money back from it. And why not? And if the Pac-12 is not offering you that, it makes sense to try your hand at a different division. Why not?
Yeah. It's funny because when you talk to these schools or you read all the articles, no one's essentially pointing a finger and saying well, we did it because they did it, or we did it because this person said we should do it, or we're doing it because this person in the conference doesn't really like us, so we're going to go over here. But the common denominator is because it's a school and not a business,
right?
Is that it's money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Remember, it's a school, not a business.
School, not a business. It's we always are saying that here in the Media Boat podcast. It's a school, not a business. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, ultimately we'll see how it all shakes up, but the Pac-12 is going to have to do a lot in order to get schools to come back, and I don't know if they survive it.
Well, everyone's doing this because of football, because it makes the $32 million per year.
Yeah.
But what about all the other sports tied to it?
They get along for the ride, I guess, unfortunately. So we'll see what happens.
You're going to get baseball players playing in Texas while still going to school.
Yeah, I guess so.
While on game road trips. It's going to be hectic.
So look forward to that. In
Yeah.
the meantime, speaking of hectic, the WGA is still trying to meet with the producers on a new deal. This much anticipated new meeting, following the, of course, meeting that caused the strike in the first place, took place on Friday afternoon in Sherman Oaks and ran about, let's say, an hour. But it did not go well. So this was between the AMPTP and WGA negotiators and general counsel. Sources say that the WGA made it clear they will not bend on proposals to establish minimum staffing levels in episodic TV and a guaranteed minimum number of weeks of employment. The producers have called those proposals non-starters and gave no indication on Friday that they're prepared to change their position. However, even if the WGA gets a deal, writers will still honor all picket lines, meaning the SAG-AFTRA one. So if the writers do sign a deal before the actors do, they will still show solidarity and strike alongside SAG-AFTRA. Not that that's going to be anytime soon, because if this story proves anything, the producers just continue to just completely just ignore the demands.
Right. I mean, because these are articles that we pull typically from both like Deadline, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, owned by one Penske Media, as we've reported on before, that is in bed with the Producers Guild.
Yeah.
That these, I just want to put out there, be careful where you get the news from, because they can be a skewed view.
Yeah.
Like this article, trying to pin it on WGA, saying that they will not bend on both the minimum staffing levels and the minimum weeks of employment, saying that they're non-starters.
Right.
Well, minimum wage also used to be a non-starter. Paternity leave also used to be a non-starter. 10-hour workdays also used to be a non-starter. Like, that's the reason why they're here. That's the reason why they're negotiating, is because they want to get the conversation started on these. You can't just keep kicking the can down the road. That's how things don't change. Like, this is good on the WGA. This isn't. They put out this article in order to like get our people, the writers and other people to read it and be like, why don't they, bend, and then we can start negotiating. It's like, but no, like that's literally why they're striking, is to get better benefits, better employment, better contracts.
So yeah, I mean, it seemed like from people from the Writers Guild perspective that they pretty much expected this meeting to go as it did, because they had pretty much heard ahead of time. It's like, oh yeah, they're not bringing anything new to the table. They're just gonna they're gonna just try to stonewall you and just be like, well, I'm sorry, like this is what all you can do. And that's sure enough what happened. That's why it was only an hour long and nothing got done.
It's so you can both make a checkbox that says, hey, I tried reaching out to you. You were the one being unreasonable here. So I want to go tell these papers and news outlets that we both own, that we own over here, not the WGA, that we own on the producer side, and say, we tried talking with them. They're the one being unreasonable with these demands.
Right. So we continue to strike. They'll continue to form lines, and we'll just have to wait until this happens again. And finally, the producers realize that they need to come to the table with something. They need to offer something, move the ball, because right now there's no movement, and we're just going to stay like this in purgatory until there is.
Yep, WGA and SAG-AFTRA both on strike.
Still. All right. So those are your television news stories. This week, did you watch anything of note?
Not anything new. I do want to make a note though. So a couple of weeks ago, I did talk about Netflix, the anime Zom 100.
Yeah.
Turns out Netflix made a live action movie about Zom 100, which is why they put the anime out, and now the live action movie is also out. So you can watch both and compare.
Well, there you go. Have you done that yet?
No.
Fair enough. All right. Well,
and then stuff that is premiering today on the 8th as we speak, Hard Knocks.
Yep.
And Only Murders in the Building.
Yes.
So we will have thoughts on that
next week.
next week.
We'll definitely be watching that. Speaking of mysteries, Christy is very excited for that one as well.
Yes.
All right. So since we don't have any television shows to talk about, we can move right on into cancellations and renewals.
What am I no longer watching?
You're no longer watching City on Fire on Apple TV Plus, as that has been canceled after just one season. But you are watching more The Summer I Turned Pretty, as its third season has been confirmed for Prime Video.
Congratulations.
I guess. Chrissy likes the book on which that's based, but we haven't watched the show. Note, Taylor Swift, speaking again about her, because she pops up in every single segment of the show, apparently. She revealed the Taylor's version of Delicate in a trailer for The Summer I Turned Pretty, which has people, of course, freaking out about his reputation next. We'll see.
Okay.
But yeah, for now, that's all we know. All right, let's move on into everyone's favorite part of the show, not deaths, where we talk about recent deaths in pop culture. And you are writing one down at the moment. I do recall this happening earlier today.
I did not see this happening, so that's why I'm
Yeah, I
writing it
know
down.
it's a sad one. But first,
and this one.
Yeah, we had Mark Margolis, age 83. Actor, was in shows like Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and Pi. So
yeah, one of the older he was an older actor on those shows. But yeah, wasn't part of the Breaking Bad universe, then became part of the Better Call Saul universe. And then Life of Pi, or not Life of Pi, that's just Pi.
Not Life
the David Fincher film.
Right. Yes. We also had DJ Casper, age 58. That's pretty young. DJ and songwriter, but best known as the writer of everybody's favorite wedding classic, the Cha-Cha Slide.
So should we clap our hands?
Yeah, I mean, sure what he would want was we should all do the Cha-Cha Slide today in honor of him. Because yeah, it's just such a staple. You hear it at every middle school dance, to proms, to, like I said, weddings. It's at every wedding I've been to.
Well, ever since he put out something new, the Casper Slide Part 2.
Oh, well, there you
and
go.
This is where we get funky.
Oh,
funky.
right. That is very good.
You got it. Yeah. Funky.
But yeah, by itself, even if he had only written the Cha-Cha Slide, he would be a legend. So yes, R.I.P. DJ Casper. And then lastly, we have William Friedkin, age 87. Was the director of The French Connection, The Exorcist, and To Live and Die in L.A. Definitely a legend amongst directors in Hollywood. A lot of very important, significant movies under his belt.
Yeah, I believe he did. He won the Oscar in 1971 for The Exorcist.
Right. So Oscar under his belt as well. He will be missed, certainly. So those are your deaths. Let's move on. We're just trucking along in this podcast, aren't we?
Yes, we're just moving right along. This is a fast one.
This is like going to be half of what last week's was. Let's talk about movies, and let's talk about the weekend box office numbers. Like we thought would happen, your number one movie is still Barbie at $53 million this weekend. 459 total domestic, and yes, we'll talk about it in a moment, past the $1 billion mark worldwide. At number 2 is Meg 2: The Trench. Made a cool $30 million. That's not bad, actually, considering how the box office has been lately. Good for the Meg. People actually went and saw it this week. Number 3, Oppenheimer continues to chug along with another $29 million. That's at $228 million domestic, and I believe around just broke 400K worldwide. Or million, not K.
And it also got an extension in the IMAX screenings.
Yes.
So you can still see your 70 millimeter IMAX print in Oppenheimer.
As long as they don't break it.
Yes.
Number 4, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, in its second week made $28 million. That's sitting at 43.
That is not its second week. That's its first week. It's got the rare Wednesday release.
You're right. So, well, I guess that considered, it's not that it hasn't debuted as strong as people thought it would.
No,
Maybe they were hoping for counter
plastering
programming.
Seth Rogen's name everywhere
Yeah.
probably didn't do the justice they thought it would.
Well, I mostly think it's like if they thought this was going to be counter programming for Barbie and Oppenheimer, it just didn't work that way.
Or the Meg, or Meg 2.
And I'm pretty sure nobody expected that Barbie, especially, would do as well as it did for as long as it's doing. Is I think maybe part of it. And then rounding out your top five, another film that probably the studio was hoping would do better, Haunted Mansion, with only $9 million, adding to a measly 42 over 3 weeks now. So yeah, it's not doing well. So those are your box office numbers for this week. Moving on to upcoming new releases. We have 2 this week, although do we? Because I'm pretty sure that one of these got pushed.
It did, but it is a release if you have PlayStation 5.
Well, it's not. So I'm gonna move that to next week. But for this week, we do 1 new release: Last Voyage of the Demeter, which we saw a trailer for this.
Yes, this is Dracula on a ship.
Yes. If that's something you always wanted, well, we got a movie for you.
Otherwise, there is a movie out, technically getting a wide release, called Jules, about the writer Jules Verne.
Okay.
That one starring Ben Kingsley.
Yes.
As the titular Jules.
But in case if you're wondering about Gran Turismo, it was supposed to be this week. It has been pushed to the end of the month.
Yes, but like I said, if you have PlayStation, you can see it early on PlayStation.
Yeah. But chances are, just like the rest of America, you don't care about that movie. Let's move on to the first story of our movie news this week, which, as I mentioned in the box office section, is about Barbie's $1 billion. Barbie has indeed now crossed $1 billion global in just its 3rd weekend. Barbie has also held the #1 rank in 35 markets and is now the 2nd biggest studio film of 2023, both internationally and globally, behind, of course, the Super Mario Brothers movie. For now, if it continues to have legs, it could absolutely pass Mario.
And there's one thing Barbie's known for.
Yes.
It's her multiple jobs and opportunities.
Oh, but also...
But yes.
I see what you're doing. Anyways, that makes director Greta Gerwig the only woman in the $1 billion club, with sole credit for directing a film. Note, both Frozen and Frozen 2 were co-directed by a woman, Jennifer Lee, and Anna Boden co-directed Captain Marvel. At this moment, 53 films have made more than $1 billion. Barbie is among only 9 that center female protagonists. Wow, that's a big difference.
Yeah, just shows the strength of both Barbie and the directing power of Greta Gerwig. And what happens when a studio puts a auteur in charge of their products and lets them actually make a film that they want to make.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in a little bit. I have now seen Barbie, so we can actually have a real conversation about it this week.
Ooh, okay. But, maybe that'll push it to the 1.5 hour mark. Then.
Maybe we'll see. I don't think we're going to talk for an entire hour about Barbie, but we will talk about Barbie. Thankfully, I burned some of what I had to say with a thoughts post on the website, so I'm not going to go 30 minutes like I could have if I didn't do that. But what I will say is, yes, as for the story, yeah, it's a big deal. Congratulations to Greta Gerwig for making this milestone. I'm sure there will be more to follow. Fingers crossed. And yeah, as you're saying, it's a reminder to studios that putting a woman as your director and putting your woman in a lead role, like a woman in a lead role in a big blockbuster film, does not mean that it's going to do badly. This is proof that it can do well. Yes, is it helped by the fact that everybody knows what a Barbie is? Probably. But I feel like by itself, the film and the word of mouth around it had to do some of the help to get it to the stratosphere like it has. It can't just be the Barbie name. But we'll see what lessons Hollywood takes from this, because I think there's multiple directions it could go. And if we know anything about Hollywood, they often learn the wrong lessons from things like this. So we'll see.
What you mean? They watch the Barbie movie and take the wrong lessons from it? Like, what kind of movie would that even look like?
Oh boy, we could probably think of one. But yeah, we'll talk more about that when we talk about Barbie, about the
Yes.
laundry list of Mattel properties that are now going to be farmed out for a movie.
All right.
We'll see.
But Mattel isn't the only one
No.
who is making movies based off toys.
So yeah, Hasbro has for a while, but what I didn't know going into this week was that Hasbro also happens to own let's say a studio that dabbles in other properties for film and television that have nothing to do with their toys. Well, they owned it. They don't anymore.
I feel like we talked about this in 2019 when they bought
Yeah,
it.
maybe, but I didn't realize that since then they've made some really successful stuff. So here's the story. Lionsgate is set to buy Hasbro Entertainment's one eOne film and TV business, or Entertainment One, or eOne, which we'll refer to it as, and TV business for $500 million. Quote, the transaction has been approved by both companies' boards of directors and remains subject to customary closing conditions. End quote. The deal is expected to close by the end of 2023. Hasbro acquired eOne back in 2019, as you mentioned, as part of a $4 billion all-cash transaction. At the time, Hasbro looked to the eOne deal to build the toy maker into a media contender, as it combined the Indie Studios film and TV unit with its own. According to a press release from Hasbro, quote, the sale will include a talented team of employees, a content library of nearly 6,500 titles, active productions for non-Hasbro owned IP like The Rookie, Yellow Jackets, and Naked and Afraid franchises, and the eOne unscripted business, which will include rights for certain Hasbro-based shows like Play-Doh Squished. Meanwhile, popular IP in the Hasbro family brand division like Peppa Pig, Transformers, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, My Little Pony, Power Rangers, Play-Doh, Monopoly, and Clue were not only excluded from the deal, but will see, quote, significant development, production, and financing capabilities, unquote, support across film, TV, animation, and digital shorts, as they've been rolled into Hasbro's brands licensing and merchandising operation. So basically what's happening here, even though Hasbro owned Entertainment One and used the Entertainment One company basically to put out stuff with their IP, Lionsgate doesn't get any of that. Lionsgate is basically getting the non-Hasbro owned stuff and the studio that came with it. But Hasbro is still going to make deals probably with other studios to create television and movies based on their IP that they want to keep having complete creative control over.
Yes, but Transformers will still be a Universal property.
Right.
Everything else will get a first look through Lionsgate.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons will get a first look, or has its deal with Paramount. But everything else, as mentioned, first look through Lionsgate. I think the recent Power Rangers film was also through Lionsgate.
Okay.
Or was that Legendary? That might have been Legendary.
I don't remember. Maybe.
But going forward, Lionsgate, as you mentioned, basically of that $4 billion deal, only purchased the eOne Entertainment.
Yeah.
For $500 million.
Right. Yeah.
That being said, following the story, there were other stories about a Monopoly film in the works at Lionsgate in partnership with Hasbro.
Okay. And like we kind of mentioned just a moment ago, Hasbro is probably kind of looking at the success of something like Barbie and being like, well, what do we have that we can do like that? Again, learning the wrong lessons from the film, but we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah,
you mean
I think
we're not going to get My Little Pony and then they come into here, into the real world, and be horrified by brony culture?
I have a feeling that will never happen.
I have a feeling that will happen.
Oh boy. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. A couple times actually. But yeah, so I don't know how I feel about this. I mean, it's interesting. I think what, like I said, I think the most interesting thing to me about the story is I had no idea that eOne was responsible for such big shit like Yellow Jackets and Naked and Afraid, like stuff that like has been a huge success. So good for them, first of all. And I
Mhm.
guess Lionsgate is a good home for those franchises.
I mean, don't knock the rookie because that even got its own spin-off
That's
too.
true. It did very quickly too.
Well,
So
5 years isn't quick. Also, 5 years is a long time to still be considered a rookie.
I guess yeah. You make that joke every year. Anyway, you made that joke every time it gets renewed. You're like, such and
Well,
such
yeah,
season
at
is a
one point,
long
stop
time to
calling
be
it the
here.
rookie or get a new rookie.
The veteran, just call it that. Anyway, so yeah, Lionsgate, good deal, I think, especially paying like what, a quarter of, like not even a quarter, like an
An
eighth of
eighth.
what they paid for.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. That's it for movie news. Did we watch any movies this week? Well, did you watch any movies this week?
Ooh, did I?
Did
No. No, I didn't. Did I?
you?
No,
Okay,
not this week. I talked all about my stuff that I watched last week.
last week. Well, I got my movie on. I didn't watch just one movie. I watched two movies, but don't worry. I'm not going to talk about the other one because the other one was I finally watched 2009's Whip It, directed by Drew Barrymore.
The roller derby one?
Yeah, I hadn't seen it. We watched it. We had a good time. But anyways, after that, we actually went to a movie theater, and yes, Christy and I finally saw Barbie. And like I said, I wanted to wait until I had seen it so we could really delve into it because, and I know this is for sure, especially now after seeing it, it is really hard to talk about that movie without getting into spoilers.
And yet I did last week.
Yeah, you gave a very surface level opinion about it. So do you want to
So
reiterate that here? Is this like surface level how you felt about it?
so it's a good film directed by a good director,
Mm-hmm.
starring a great cast.
Yeah.
And the basic premise is Barbie's being a little bit dysfunctional, something's happening. So she comes to the real world to find out what's going on, only to realize that people aren't really getting the Barbie message that she sent out to make.
Mm-hmm.
And neither is Ken.
Right.
So he brings himself back to the Barbie land and basically stages a revolt. And it's up to Barbie to save the day. Starring a cavalcade of colorful characters,
Yeah.
including one Will Ferrell as the CEO of Mattel.
So that's all true. That is this the movie is doing all of those things. And it does a good job at all of what you said.
And here's where the spoilers
Yeah.
start.
But the thing about this movie is what it's actually doing is way crazier and way beyond what I expected it to be. I guess I should have expected to a certain extent that it would be doing something under the surface, considering it's Greta Gerwig co-writing the script and directing, and she's not necessarily somebody who makes surface level family films. And
Mhm.
so I should have known that that's not what this
I
was going to
mean,
be.
see Ladybird, for
Yeah,
example.
right, exactly. There's a lot of her in this film, and it comes out being essentially kind of a summit on the state of feminism in 2023,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well as
possibly.
as well as being commentary on what Barbie means in 2023. The concept of Barbie, the doll, the franchise, the image, the vibe. Like it manages to tell basically the story of Barbie and make it feel like it is the story of women. And it feels massive. Like the stuff that it's trying to do is so ambitious and so big that it's really hard to like even know where to really start. So as I mentioned, I wrote a piece for the website. If you want to go to mediaboatpodcast.com, kind of read my thoughts about the movie. I thought it was really cool that it's able to do all of this while also being a really colorful, entertaining movie. I mean, it doesn't sacrifice any of the fun for the heady stuff. You still get dance scenes, you still get fight scenes, you still get chase scenes, you still get like big set pieces, fun like bits of comedy. You get so much, especially with Ryan Gosling. Like Ryan Gosling is just amazing in this thing.
Yeah, you get enough of everything in there.
Yeah, it's just everything you'd want this to be from the trailers. It still is that movie. It's still very over the top, big production, blockbuster material. But the fact that it's doing that at the same time as say like actually having a lot of substance to say is an amazing balancing act that I think for the most part the film pulls off. Um I think I want to specifically point out how the parallel stories of Barbie and Ken work really, really well with each other. Because the thing, as you mentioned, is Barbie's on this like journey into the real world to kind of discover why she's starting to have these like awkward thoughts, these
Intrusive
imperfect,
thoughts. Yeah.
yeah, this imperfect vibes intruding on her perfect world of Barbie land. And at the same time, Ken is discovering, hey, wait a minute. This stuff that I've never considered before is now becoming like super obvious. Why do men rule the real world? And why don't we have that in Barbie land? Why are we treated as kind of these like we're just referred to as our jobs and we kind of just are there to support Barbie? Why is that?
Why
Again,
are we an
parallel,
accessory and not a
right?
main feature?
It's like parallel. It's an interesting how like what she does is like it's parallel. So the Ken in the Barbie land is kind of like the like Barbie in in the real world, where it's just, and to have them go on opposite trajectories is really interesting, and does actually like work as kind of a metaphor for, hey, wait a minute, have you ever considered what it would be like to live like this? What it would be like if you felt like you were like being judged everywhere you walked, if you felt like there was no way to to feel like you were enough, or to feel like you were doing like being the ideal version of yourself because of societal pressure. And so like it's interesting to see them kind of go on those both journeys at the same time. And I also thought it was interesting how they resolve it. Again, getting into spoilers here, essentially the lesson ends up being for both of them, it's about figuring out yourself above all. Once you figure out your self identity, it's much easier to deal with what the world throws at you. And you're able to not necessarily, you're no longer have to rely on other people's image of you, other people's, like, you don't have to define yourself by an outside source, whether it be a fandom or the idea of whether women love you, like will like you or not if you do something, like, or what society expects you to do. If you figure out yourself, then stuff will fall like the pieces will fall together. It's an incredibly salient lesson, I think, for a lot of people, and it's something that I think a lot of people don't realize until hell, their late 20s, 30s, or maybe never, like depending on the people. There's some people who are still trying to figure that out late into life. And I think it's really cool to have such a mainstream movie remind people of that, especially men that think like Ken in the movie and have defined themselves by an outside source like that. It really goes well with a lot of stuff we've been talking about on the podcast over the last few years, like fan communities like Rick and Morty fans, for example, where we've had these big stories about like fans defining themselves by something that's outside of them, and so they just get distracted from being decent people, like, or like the incel culture, like on the internet, where people have decided, oh well, I have this idea that women don't like will never want to deal with me, so I'm just going to like make my entire identity based on that. It's like, no, you're like missing the point. Like, it's not because of these reasons, these perceptive reasons that you think, these perceived reasons that you think that this is happening. It's because you're trying to find an identity outside of yourself, when really you need to figure out who you are. So yeah, it is silly when all the Kens are like, oh, Ken is me, I am Ken. It's a funny moment played for laughs, but there is a real grain of truth to that scene. And there's a heart to this movie, I believe, is that like self discovery, that self identity. And I haven't seen a movie that's really said that. as well as this movie has. And so I think it's a fantastic lesson that I think a lot of people can benefit
It's also a lesson that sticks with you. I mean, I
from.
saw it 2 weeks ago, and you just even talk about it is like brings back like, oh yeah, so
Right.
it's such a good film. Like all the empowering scenes with it, not just
Yeah.
with Ken, like you said, but also with Barbie going
Yeah.
into the real world and immediately feeling like she's being judged just on
Right.
how she's looked walking down the street, not doing anything.
And it's interesting that by the end of the film, despite all of this, she still appreciates the nuance and complication of real life more than the day-to-day like boredom and
Mhm.
predictableness of Barbie Land. She still ends up choosing, spoiler again, to be in the real world because she'd rather have the fleeting moments of joy and emotion and those complicated feelings of being human than just go through the motions. And it really makes it like it's a good lesson, I feel, for anybody who feels like the negatives of like outweigh the positives, because it's really easy to fall into that trap. Again, yes, it's a movie and it can only do so much, but I felt like the fact that this movie based on a doll is doing any of this at all is ridiculously ambitious, and the fact that it does it well enough where we're talking about it like this is like quite a statement, and it's easily one of the best movies of the year, like no contest because of it.
Yeah, there are two scenes in particular that do stand out as they are showstoppers, and they literally
Yeah.
stop the show to explain what's going on.
Yeah.
One being the America Ferrera monologue,
Right.
and the second one being the end where Barbie is talking with the creator of Barbie in that
Yeah.
kind of white void, where they
Yeah.
literally like stop everything just to hammer in the point of one, what it is to me being a woman in today's culture and society and all the
Mhm.
feelings and actions that go with it. But then also, what is Barbie? What is she
Right.
meant to be? What is she meant to represent? How are we supposed to see her in 2023
Yeah. I would
and going
add
forward?
I would add a third scene to that list. The scene where Barbie's at the bus stop and the older woman is next to her, and she
Mhm.
says, "You're beautiful." And the older woman, of course, kind of just laughs it off. She says, "I know." And I think that that's also really important for the film's message, because one of the complications of Barbie, and what's brought up in that conversation with her creator, is she has this weight on her shoulders of being this feminist icon because she can do anything and she's all these professions and all of this expectation is put on her. But there's also the beauty is also expectation, and there's so much of that, that complicates the idea of Barbie, the concept of Barbie. It's brought up in the America Ferrera speech as well, which is like there's the beauty expectations for women is far beyond what men have to deal with. There's so many things that women are expected to be, and Barbie is kind of an example of the stereotypical ideal of what beauty standards were supposed to be for women for so long, and in a lot of ways still are. In fact, I want to bring up, there's been a conversation online about that I've seen a lot of this week about the kind of weird difference between what the movie is saying about beauty standards and what the marketing team is saying about behind Barbie is saying about beauty standards. A lot of beauty companies have partnered with Barbie for this film and release beauty products that are Barbie branded, including one that is supposed to be specifically a something, let's say, to help remove collagen in cellulite, which is specifically brought up in the
In the
film.
movie, yeah.
And so there's this weird, like, again, it's not perfect. And so I don't expect it to be perfect, but it does lead to this weird feeling of like commerce versus art that we see a lot in talking about media. And it is unfortunate that it kind of skews the message of the film a little bit.
I think that although has more to deal with both the marketing of Barbie and
Yeah.
the studio behind it, which
Yes.
if you noticed in the film, I'm sure you did, the brand spanking new logo for
Yeah.
Warner Brothers Discovery smattered right behind in the boardroom scene.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. And then so yeah, it's so what the last thing I want to talk about with it, yeah, I think you're right. The heart of the film are those, what I believe, those three scenes, because it's a, like the fact that the movie, like the movie Barbie in itself has the expectations of Barbie and thus have the expectations of women. It's just, it's turtles all the way down, or Barbie's all the way down in this case, where it's like no matter what you do, the expectations of something that even touches the concept of feminism in just a slight way, the expectations immediately go through the roof. I personally think, and again, yes, I know I'm a guy. I realize that. I wish that I had, Christy here to maybe get her two cents about it. It would probably help make this conversation a little bit more well-rounded. I have done. I don't want to sound like I'm getting on soapbox here, but I just want to make this clear. I'm not talking from zero here. I have taken. I did take a feminist class in college, and I've done reading about feminism, and I have a vague idea. I have done my own research here, so I'm not talking out of my ass here, even though I don't blame anybody who would think it is, to think that I am. But from my vision of what I believe, like what my vision of feminism is yes, it does have limits when it starts crossing over with capitalism. It's never going to be a perfect, you always heard the term, like there's no ethical conception in capitalism. Well, there's no ethical feminism in capitalism either, because you can't make a movie that impacts as many people as Barbie does unless you work with the studio system. And you can't work with the studio system and not expect them to make a bunch of stupid merch based on your film. So those things are always inextricably linked. And so I think, yes, it's fair to bring up that there is a weird conversation happening between the two sides of the movie, what the movie is saying about consumerism, about Mattel as a company, what it's saying about like its treatment of women in the Barbie line. That's all right to bring up, and you should have those conversations. But again, you have to work within the system to even get somebody, unfortunately, to see it in this way. And so I don't blame Greta Gerwig for having limits to what she can do with the script, what she can do with the direction, what she can do with the film as a whole, because it is a mainstream media object that exists in capitalism. So
That will be a very interesting behind the scenes eventually,
yes,
where you have Greta Gerwig saying, "Is there anything?" Asking her like, "Is there anything you want to put in the Barbie movie that either
you
Mattel
couldn't
came
do.
back and said no, you cannot do this,
Right.
or Warner Brothers
Yeah.
Discovery came back and said you cannot do this. We will not greenlight you if you this is in the film."
Yeah. So all of that is to say that it is very still impressive what she was able to do with it. Like all the emotional stuff that we touched on, all of the feminist stuff we touched on, like all exists, and I feel like it butts up against the limits, especially the way that Mattel is portrayed here, where they pretty much just straight up say that the entire boardroom of men have no idea what they're doing with the brand. Could be very true. Even especially the lines where they say that a woman hasn't run the company since the 90s, like it's very telling. And like the fact that she was even able to say that in a movie about a Mattel property is very impressive. And it goes to show that if we keep doing things like this, maybe that moves, maybe those barriers move just a little bit further than they have been in the past. Maybe we do have the ability to make art that actually does have something to say about these toys or these properties or this nostalgia or these concepts that we have that we're making movies about. So ultimately, I think that it's an impressive balancing act that I feel is successful at what it does. But it is in no way, of course, perfect because of the limitations it just has to have. There was just no way around it unless you significantly cut the budget and the audience for the film. That's just the reality of how it works in Hollywood now.
Or more likely, you cut the vision of Greta Gerwig.
Right. Either way. Yeah. You can't make, it presents complications. So this is where I want to tie into the last thing that we talked when we were talking about properties based on, or films based on properties going forward. What Barbie, if studios will listen to the lessons. I think probably not, because you already have stories coming out. It's like, oh, Mattel has this long laundry list of movies that they want to make now based on their properties. They want to make a Hot Wheels movie. They want to make Polly Pocket. In fact, Polly Pocket already has Lena Dunham attached. I think that's a bad idea for a lot of reasons, but whatever. Do you think any of them try to actually make a statement, or do you think we're just getting Transformers style movies?
I think the lessons Hollywood will take away is that make it colorful, put in a bunch of Easter eggs and nostalgia into it, and it's okay to make fun of your own brand for what it is.
I hope. I hope they do, because even that last one, I think, is going to be hard for them to do. Especially that last one. But yeah, I imagine they'll be colorful. I imagine there'll be a lot of action set pieces. I just hope that if they take one thing away from it, is try to say something. The reason why this movie is a success, I believe, is because it does the thing that the Lego movie and Toy Story did before it, which is don't just address the nostalgia, talk about why it matters. Talk about what about the toy is important. Is it creativity? Is it friendship? You know, with Toy Story, it was about friendship. With Lego, it was about the imagination and using creativity and standing out from the crowd. And with Barbie, it was about self-identity and learning about yourself through play. Make these movies about something, because you can't just do Transformers. It wasn't about anything. Or even video game movies like the Super Mario Brothers. I tweeted about this, where it's like, it's so funny that the two biggest films of the year are Barbie, which is so introspective about what it is, and the Super Mario Brothers movie, which has literally nothing to say.
It's
literally
the safest
nothing.
movie out there. Yep.
Yeah. And so it's fascinating to me how two storied franchises could create two so different movies, complete opposite movies.
And yet both of them made $1 billion.
Yeah, and here we are. So that's Barbie. I think we said what we could say about it. Do you have anything else you want to say about Barbie that you couldn't say last week?
If you haven't seen it, go out and see it.
Yeah.
Contribute to the madness.
Yeah.
But also see Oppenheimer while you're at it.
Yeah, I'll get to it. I'll probably wait for this to be on streaming, honestly.
Hey, you can see it 79mm IMAX now. It's everywhere.
Could. Will I? We'll see. We will see. All right. Let's wrap up the show with one last thing. We, after a while, have a fan question.
Hey.
Oops, it did the thing again. Hold on.
It did the thing again. That's okay. Yep. After a brief hiatus there, we've got fan questions. If you want to ask us a fan question, you can do so by emailing us at mediaboatpodcast@gmail.com.
Indeed. So our question is, hey, boats guys, got another question for you. What fandom or pop culture did you try to get into and appreciate? I remember during the Brony craze that I wanted to understand and be part of that group, but I couldn't help but feel it was just a children's cartoon that people were overblowing as a masterpiece. Don't get me wrong, good animation and good writing, but at the end of the day, it didn't make a lot of sense to have adults basing their whole lives around it. Wow, we have a recurring theme today's podcast, don't we? Look forward to your answers. Keep on sailing. Is the media boat a motorboat or a sailing ship? So, first of all, let's address that last question. What is the media boat?
If you look onto our logo, it is clearly a sailing ship.
However,
because it has the anchor attached to it.
Yeah, I always envision it as a big classic pirate style sailing ship.
Yes.
However, an actual media boat is a motorboat with a camera on it. It's less exciting that way, but that's what it is. so yeah, it can be whatever you want it to be. How about that?
It is both a sailing ship that can transform into a motorboat if we need to go fast for the day.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Media boat of all kinds.
Yes, of all time lengths.
But anyways, to address the question, I have an easy answer because mine's the same as yours. At least one of them. I also was like, all right, what is this My Little Pony reboot? Is it as good as people are saying? And so yeah, I watched the first couple of seasons of that thing. I had a really good time because, as you mentioned, good animation, good writing. I thought it was a quality show that the fans overblew as something it wasn't. I think the thing that happened with that was similar to the thing that happened to Rick and Morty, is that as soon as you start identifying yourself as, I like a thing so much that anybody who dislikes it is my enemy, you've gone too far. And that happened with the bronies just like it did with the Szechuan sauce. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing that ultimately got ruined by fans that just wanted to like just made it their crusade. And yeah, as soon as you make something your crusade, it's just not fun anymore. However, I did have fun with the show, and I someday should go back and watch the rest of the seasons. It went for a while, like 6 or 7 seasons and a movie. And so yeah, there's a lot of My Little Pony that I didn't watch, and it was pretty good. As for other stuff, I'm trying to think of equivalents to this.
I have a couple, and
Yeah,
one of them is Avatar,
yeah,
not the Blue
The Last
Aliens,
Airbender.
The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
As
same,
I didn't watch it when it first aired, I
same.
caught it on Netflix years later. Same with
Mhm.
Legend of Korra, years later.
Right.
But like even when I did catch it, you'd still see memes and pop culture references to The Last Airbender pop up every now and then because it's such a well written show,
Yeah.
well animated show, and
Again.
here it is 15 years later, still makes a poignant statement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Did it work
the
for
other
you though?
ones, I mean, watching it years later,
But
yeah.
I think the question is asking, did it live up to that hype, and did you become a super fan because of it?
I don't think I ever became a super fan. It's hard to
Yeah.
become a super fan because of it. I'd say one I did become one of was because of you, and that'd be both Steven Universe and
Yeah.
Amphibia.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That both are well written shows uh, that both have meaningful messages to say
Yeah.
and continued on. The other one is Star versus the Force of Evil.
Hmm.
Um, just those kind of shows where, yes, it's cartoons, yes, it's for kids, but part of it being an anthology series
Hmm.
helps make it continue on and helps entice and the imagination and the theorism around the community
Yeah.
for it.
And yeah, I'm glad you
Let's
brought
say
up.
like Gravity Falls, for
Yeah,
instance, kind of like the basis for it.
I'm glad you brought up Avatar, The Last Airbender, because yeah, I also gave it a shot because I had heard so many of my friends talk effusively about it, and so many people on the internet say it was the best thing ever. And I watched it, and turns out it wasn't for me. And I was trying to figure out why. And I think I finally roughly know why. Because it's basically a shonen anime. And I don't like shonen anime. It's just a Western interpretation of a lot of those same kind of vibes. It's a show that's essentially about like a main character who needs to train to become better and better, and the interpersonal relationships that kind of happen on the periphery. But ultimately, is a show that is like leading to like big set pieces, big fight scenes, and just not a thing that works for me. I don't not really big on fantasy and or sci-fi stuff, so something has to have a really big comic hook to grab me. Though I do have to say, when I do overhear episodes, like if Chrissy's watching it or if I've had other roommates in my past watch a lot of Avatar, it is a funny show. I'm not saying that's not. It's just it wasn't enough of a comedy in that way to really like grab me.
Mhm.
And so it was just never something that really clicked for me. But do I absolutely still wish that I was in on the whole fandom? Absolutely, because I feel like people who like that show are probably right. It's probably a really cool thing to really absorb into, and there's a lot of stuff there. It just, for whatever reason, I never really clicked with it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a good example of it.
I think outside of like the cartoons, in terms of like fandom and getting appreciation for it, I've
Mhm.
seen a lot of people, especially young people who weren't around for it when it first aired. Now that it's on Max, is Friends, and that kind of
Yeah.
cultural zeitgeist of people being obsessed with Friends, especially
Right.
now that since you can binge watch the entire series,
Yeah.
both like with well being young or someone who's younger than me being with binge watch with their parents be like, oh, I remember when I watched this show when it first aired and all the everything behind it, and I'm watching it with you because it's easy and comfort food and Friends is at times like milk toast. It's comfort. Like, well, it's mac and cheese. Probably a better
it's mac and
example than
cheese.
milk
It is
toast.
television mac
It's
and
mac and
cheese.
cheese.
You're right.
Yes, TV mac and cheese.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel ultimately how I feel about this question is try anything. Like if you think that there's a possibility that you might like something that you've heard people talk about, the only good thing about our terrifying streaming future that we live in right now is the fact that you can just try whatever. Like watch a show that's on a streaming network that you heard so much about that you can just do it. Watch it. Like if you want to see a movie that somebody years ago said was the best movie ever and you just hadn't never gotten around to it, you could probably find it on streaming now. Or music, even like music is a fandom too. Like the fact that everything is just available to you, you can just get into a band that you've heard so much about. Like I did with REM a couple of years ago. I was just like, I feel like I'd like REM. I've only heard their singles. Maybe I should do a deep dive. I did, and now they're one of my favorite bands. They're great. And so yeah, like just stuff is available to you so you can have these experiences. And some of the stuff's not going to work. Some of the stuff will.
Not to sound like a broken record, but earlier this year we did do a Taylor Swift tournament where we listened to every single song she ever created in album, not bonus tracks.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it got me more into the fandom and being a Swiftie this year, more so than I've ever had to in my life.
Yeah. So yeah.
I think just on top of that, listen to what your friends say. Like if someone suggests something, give it a watch, give it a listen. You can find a half hour or an hour to like take a peek, dip your toe in, see if it is for you. Because more often than not, your friends are looking out for you and are trying to recommend stuff that you can have that they can share their fandom with.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So yeah, good question. I'm glad you brought it up. And yeah, I think it does touch on, regardless of whether you think it's like whether it works out or not, the fact that you can try these things out is really great. Some stuff is going to work, some stuff's not, as you found out, but hey, you never know until you try it. So yeah. Thank you for the question.
And with that, hey, look at that, 90 minutes. How about that?
There you go. So
told you we did it.
We did it. Sure enough, somehow we willed it into existence. So thank you for hanging out with us today with the Media Boat Podcast. We'll be back next week for another episode with more news, more thoughts, more everything that we provide to you with this service of the Media Boat Podcast. But in the meantime, we're all over the internet. If you want to watch us in video form, check out our YouTube channel. You can go search YouTube Media Boat Podcast and you'll find it. You can like, subscribe. You can, I don't know, do all sorts of things. Click the bell for notifications when we have new videos, all of that and more. If you'd rather listen to us audio style, we're on podcast services such as Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, search Media Boat Podcast. You can find us on the internet on MediaBoatPodcast.com, where you can see write-ups, including my thoughts about Barbie and even thoughts, speaking of Taylor Swift, about Taylor Swift Speak Now Taylor's version, which is also on the website, as well as just up last week, Mike's preview for all the movies coming out in the month of August. You can check out all of that and more, as well as an archive of our podcasts on MediaBoatPodcast.com. Yes, we're still on social media platforms like the artist formerly known as Twitter, where we're at MediaBoatCast. We're on Facebook, search MediaBoat Podcast there. We're on Twitch, streaming video games every once in a while on MediaBoat, on twitch.tv/MediaBoat. And we're even on IMDb and Discord. If you search for those things, you'll find it. And yeah, we'll be back next week with even more.
Yep, we'll be back next week with our initial thoughts on Only Murders in the Building, as well as the first episode of Hard Knocks. We can see the Jets lose in the Hall of Fame game, as aforementioned. But yeah, we'll be back with more news, more thoughts, maybe more of us. We'll see what happens next week.
We'll see.
All right, bye.
All righty. Bye.